Hi guys, and welcome back to today's video. We are about to get going on colouring. I actually pressed the go live button without meaning to. So let's, without further ado, guys, I am actual onesie, and there's my book, guys. And we're going to be getting on with what we did yesterday, and we'll be listening to some more of the mutants. Maybe I might listen to something a bit different. I've got the Jungle Book actually in the background, but I think I'll leave till next week. Maybe we'll do a piece on that, as this month is all about animals. But we've done our mutant animal here so far, with a monkey, parrot, and where is he? Turtle down here. And we're going to be sort of colouring this one in today and getting some sort of stuff done to it. Just looking for the video we had yesterday. Quite a good series yesterday. Where we left off.
Winter mornings
as an advert. But as always, guys, my name is Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. I am here every single day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. I'm just grabbing my pens out. We've got these pens again, which I was using from last year. And I might possibly need my other pens as well. I've got the same playlist as we had on yesterday, guys. It's all about mutants or mutants in the Marvel series. As I like to listen to Marvel stories as I'm drawing or colouring or whatever I might be doing. But today is to do with colouring, and we'll be using these pens. They're double-sided again, guys. So one side is a brush pen and the other side is just like a felt tip, whereas these ones here are a soft brush tip, and I might be using them as well. They are quite dark, as you probably noticed in the back on the other videos, so I'm more likely to be using these colours more than I will be the others. Like I said, they're two-sided, so you've got one side is just a felt tip, and then on the other side you've got like a brush pen, which isn't, it's very hard brush pen.
Well, what about Matthew Malloy? No, he is not on the same level as Matthew Malloy. Matthew Malloy is insanely powerful.
But I'm going to be getting on this as quickly as possible. I'm a bit earlier today, guys, which because I've got to go to a meeting this afternoon, so I'm going to try and get as much colouring on this one as possible today, and then I'll have to go off to that meeting. I will be playing some more VR content probably this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. So if you did enjoy yesterday's artwork, it's not artwork. If you did enjoy yesterday's so if you are a fan of the art and all the other stuff, I will be doing some digital art. But what I was saying there was if you liked the VR worlds that I was playing yesterday, then I will be playing some more either the next couple of days or over the weekend. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys.
So, for example, like the Incredible Hulk is considered,
and come on back when I do upload some more. I'm more likely I will be live over the weekend, but I probably will be over on Mixer as well.
I will catch you all later. Peace.
Yeah, I am really just putting down what I would think a turtle would look like. Green is green. I'm pretty sure it's brown, but I'm kind of happy with this green, the way it is going down. I might change it a little bit and have his belly sort of a different color, actually, thinking about it before I do this. And it might not be a bad idea.
And if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading on my channel, then feel free to subscribe. And you can also offer
this is Comics Explained, guys, that I'm listening to. Going through the mutants.
Later on in this channel.
This is a mutant animal. If you didn't check out yesterday's, how I sketched this in all freehand,
But we're actually
and
for this week, and I think we'll probably bring it back next week. But
recorded all of that for you guys. So if you want to find out how I sketch this, then you can do by checking out the other videos. Or if you come back or go up into the playlist, they're all up there, guys, with loads of other artwork for you to check out from last year. This year is sort of a new experience again, guys, because I've been doing this for a while. And each month I do a theme.
This was a really cool concept. Now, what this means for the X-Men in the
universe, this month's theme is animals.
Which is kind of weird
but the first week it will be with mutant animals and how I could, if I could, combine animals into one animal, because there's three. We've got turtle, which I'm going to actually green him out a little bit.
This explanation by Rogue, right? You know, Rogue is like, this is day 1,000. We're 1,000 days into this conflict. And what we find out is that, you know, by way of her exposition and things that are going on, that there's basically, this is like the last haven for mutants in the world. That some massive war, some massive conflict has broken out. And the result is that Magneto grabbed what was left of the mutant community and just took them to this one location, which is called Fortress X. And every single day there is a nonstop, or not really a nonstop, but every single day there is an onslaught of humanity in an attempt to attack what's left of the mutant population in order to take them out. Now, the cool thing about this is that we get this disembodied voice from a person known only as X. And X is kind of like this all-encompassing thing, right? It's like Jarvis from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? I mean, like Tony Stark just talks to Jarvis, Jarvis responds. It's the same way here with this story, in the sense that X allows the various mutants that are here in this conflict to basically organize fronts to decide, you know, who needs to go and where. X monitors vital signs of those individuals who are currently fighting. It's kind of like this omnipresent being or concept of some sort that communicates with them. But the cool thing is that, of course, this group, as we see them, is kind of a mishmash of different things. It's a mishmash of the X-Men Legacy team, and it's a mishmash of New Mutants. Keep in mind, New Mutants was originally designed to be this sort of reimagining of the original X-Men, in the sense that where Chris Claremont's run of the X-Men was wildly popular, you know, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Wolverine, so on and so forth, Marvel wanted to bring back the original premise of the X-Men, but do so in a way that could tap into young readers. So we got like Danielle Moonstar, and we got a lot of these younger mutants that Xavier was basically training as a new team for the purpose of carrying on the X-Men mantle after the original X-Men had grown up and basically moved on. And so because of this, it's really kind of cool to see this conflict play out, but things end quick, fast, and in a hurry. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but there are some notable differences in terms of characters that we're familiar with, especially Cyclops. And this is where we start to get a lot of this exposition, a lot of this backstory, in the sense that what we learned was that at some point along the line, mutants began emerging in a much different way that we're used to. Instead, what had basically happened here is that Cyclops' powers emerged in a movie theater, you know, and people were killed because of that, as opposed to his powers just kind of emerging arbitrarily in a class, I think it was, or something along those lines. Jean Grey's powers of telepathy and telekinesis didn't emerge by way of her basically hearing voices. Instead, they emerged by way of the Phoenix Force in Albany, New York. And it was kind of like the Stamford, Connecticut initiating Civil War kind of situation, in the sense that Jean Grey, you know, emerging as the Phoenix Force cost the lives of some 600,000 people. And in response, it was this Days of Future Past-esque situation. The difference here is that where Days of Future Past saw like the reformation of the Sentinel program, instead, what we have here in Age of X are called X-Ms. And X-Ms are basically just kind of like enhanced humans, so on and so forth. But the difference is that mutants were basically rounded up, and a lot of them were thrown in Alcatraz. The issue is that when they were thrown in Alcatraz, Cyclops, because he had optic beams, was used by humanity to basically execute mutants. They would literally take his powers, and they would use them to kill mutants that were deemed to be killed. And so because of this is one of the reasons why Magneto grabbed whatever he could, grabbed whatever heroes were left, and brought them over to this place, Fortress X. Now, what we also have is this barrier that's being created, that's constantly being restored by the combined efforts of Legion, by Psylocke, and a handful of others. They use their psionic abilities to basically put up this wall that humanity constantly has to try to take out all the time. And that's basically how they try to keep themselves safe. You know, they basically create this force wall that humanity has to fight through. And then by the time they get done with all that, they're met with like waves of, you know, a handful of X-Men and New Mutants. Now, the other half of this is we have Moira McTaggart. Now, Moira McTaggart being here is kind of cool, because remember, she's like the foremost geneticist when it comes to
Moira McTaggart. Right, there's the shell of the turtle, which looks crap, but hey ho.
Is that below this whole facility, you know, within
I've actually not liked doing
is Wolverine. The difference here is that during this
any of this,
conflict,
because
during
it's
this whole birth of mutants,
combination
the
of
death
so many
600,000
different animals.
humans, the idea that humanity was fighting against them, Wolverine was used to basically create a cure, and it was used on Wolverine himself. And so because of that, Logan basically does not seem to have a healing factor, and even he says that. He says, look, because of the fact that my healing factor is gone, I'm basically dying of adamantium poisoning. And we know that's the case, right? Like, we know that's the case with Wolverine. Like, adamantium, basically, the reason why adamantium bonding never really seemed to work with anybody before Wolverine was because they didn't have a healing factor, and it would essentially just shut their bodies down. Their bodies would die of adamantium poisoning if they didn't die through the bonding process itself. With Wolverine not having a healing factor, he's essentially just dying, just poisoning his body. Not only that, he basically talks to one of the characters here and says, look, if I pop my claws, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm basically just going to bleed out. And so it's basically Wolverine's being depowered. He has no more real abilities. There's really nothing he can do. And so what happens is that we basically have Rogue here. Rogue basically plays the role of someone called Legacy. Now, the reason why she plays the role of Legacy is because she's not really a field medic. She basically reads people their last rites. Remember, Rogue has the ability to absorb people's consciousness whenever it is that they die. And so what happens is during these conflicts, whenever someone dies, Rogue goes out to where they're at, and in their final moments, she reads them their final rites, and then she touches them and absorbs their personality, so they basically live on through her. Now, Rogue doesn't really do this for the purpose of using their powers. Rogue is just kind of like, a stand-in for a priest or something along those lines. The kicker to all this is that when Rogue goes back out to the battlefield, and begins kind of looking around and begins really, kind of dealing with the situation being what it is after she had absorbed the memories of a girl named Tempo who had died, she sees someone who basically stumbles in from outside the wall. And when this person falls, they basically phase through a solid object, and that tells us this is Kitty Pryde. And so the question is, where did Kitty Pryde come from? Like, how did she get here? Well, of course, Magneto immediately responds by sending a full contingent out to capture Kitty Pryde. And this is when we learned that she was someone that had been held prisoner within Fortress X by Magneto himself. And somewhere along the line, she had been able to engineer an escape, had gone outside the wall, and when she came back with a camera, Rogue, of course, hides it from everybody, goes to sift through the pictures, and is astonished by what she sees. And so what we do here is we pick up with Magneto when he takes the body of Kitty Pryde back to the prison cells, basically the holding cells. And within these holding cells, in addition to Kitty Pryde, is Charles Xavier, Emma Frost, the Stepford Cuckoos. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, the Stepford Cuckoos are actually a really cool concept. They're basically clones of Emma Frost. But the difference between Emma and the Stepford Cuckoos is that Emma is a wildly powerful telepath. She's more powerful than Charles Xavier and is Omega level in terms of her capabilities, meaning she's one of the most powerful mutants.
Okay, again, you can't see the color that I can see, guys, which is kind of annoying. But that's not black. That's actually brown that you might be seeing. Again, guys, if you want to see the full picture in the way it should look, I will post it to Instagram, so don't forget to head on over there. Okay, my name's Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. I am here every single day on YouTube, very occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. So you can leave me messages over there, guys, and leave a request on what animals you want combined next week.
The difference is that his powers go so much
because I'm back to my normal routine now.
The mutant ability to just know how mechanical systems work. Madison Jeffries can do the same thing, but
which is sketching on a Monday,
he can manipulate
inking on Tuesday, which is what we did yesterday, and coloring on a Wednesday. And then I will. Yeah, I did take a picture. It's good. I just thought to myself, did I take a picture of this? I will be inking. Sorry, no, I will be digitizing this like I do every other piece that I do. It's all good practice, and I just like to use my digital app. Again, it's completely free.
Kitty Pryde within this prison of Fortress X is basically held under the control of a robot named.
And if you guys want to know where I get it from, then all you got to do is leave me a message either on a video or this one itself, and I will send you a link to where I got it from. It's a very good app, guys. Again, it's completely free, but it's basically Photoshop, just with less tools. But you will have the option to download more tools if you would wish to do so.
what he does,
I'm kind of happy with the tools they give us
on the battlefield. To a battle that was actually 3 days
there
prior
are
to this.
so many tools you
It
can use.
was a massive assault. He was able to hold off forces, pretty decently. But then he came across somebody who basically
somebody once told me and wow, what's going around me.
By any stretch of the imagination, it didn't seem to be relevant in any form or fashion. Instead, what happened is Cyclops just grabbed their dog tags and it simply said Jackson, 45th Infantry, 2776. Now, the reason why is Cyclops does this just kind of keep track of the people who have died, to keep track of the people who have been injured here. But one of the other reasons why he grabbed this is because as he's telling this woman, he had this dog tag before. That this dog tag belonged to someone else. And so it seems like there's two of these people who died. And the question that Cyclops has is why? Why is it that there are basically two of these people? Are they being recycled? Is there something going on? Like it's basically, the same person attacking over and over again, almost as if they're being replicated or the situations repeated.
I'm going to have to find some color picks in a minute.
Because of this, what happens is we pick up
so much to do, so much to say. I need another brown because that's not good enough.
What was going on with this camera? What is the deal with this? Why do you have this camera? And what does it mean that everything on it is basically blank? And Kitty Pryde says, well, let me out and I'll show you everything that I know. I'll tell you what it is that I found out there. The problem is in the middle of all this, these robots, of course, these guards begin to attack. And of course, Rogue basically tries to use the powers of Madison Jeffries to override the programming of these robots, but it doesn't work. Now, why it doesn't work, we don't know, but we could basically assume here that with these robots being designed for the purpose of, both guarding mutant prisoners as well as keeping mutants within Fortress X safe, that they're probably immune to the powers of mutants who are here. And so because of this...
Okay, right, I'm going to have to search up some colours for the parrot, that's definitely, because I'm not sure on the parrot's colours. But the rest pretty much is going to be nice and simple. What more likely we'll do for the colouring on the background of this is use pencil, just to give it a background, like a hint to skyline sort of maybe.
You have Cyclops, you have Wolverine who's cutting himself to see whether or not his healing factor is ever going to come back. There's people who are just basically sitting here watching the events unfold or just whatever it is that they happen to be doing at this particular time. Not only that, there's also a psychic backlash to everybody there, but Magneto seems to be the only one who's aware of the fact that this is done because of Rogue. Now, how it is he knows it's her, we don't know. Because remember, in this whole situation, we don't know how far back the whole relationship between Magneto and Charles Xavier goes. All we know is that Magneto's here, Xavier's here, and that's really about it. Now, of course, Rogue is basically forced to make her escape, to just kind of bail out as best she can and run for the hills. But because of the fact that she had gone into the prison against the wishes of Magneto, and because of the fact that she had spoken to and no one knows what's going on with her, she seems to be an enemy of the group. She's branded that way by Magneto. And Magneto goes to Daniel Moonstar and says, you and your cater, your task is to find Rogue and to bring her back in here. To basically, take her as a prisoner. She's now an enemy of Fortress X. She's an enemy of what stands, or at least what's left of the X-Men here. Now, at this point,
wow, this is very orange.
It's actually kind of cool here because Wolverine's kind of like this guy that doesn't really have an allegiance to anyone. I mean, he's really just like the barkeep. He's the guy who's just there. He's not on the side of Magneto. He's not on the side of Rogue. He's just kind of keeping people safe, or just seems to be the middleman, someone that people can find in. But then we find out that Magneto does have allegiances to a degree when Rogue shows up, and Rogue, is basically kind of panicking, trying to understand what's going on, trying to figure out what happened when she read the mind of everybody, as well as this idea that Magneto goes out and says, I'm going to go find Rogue myself, as well as bringing, a handful of you guys with me. Now, of course, switching back to Rogue and Wolverine, the cool thing is that, Wolverine's like, what the heck is going on? What are you doing here? And Rogue says things just don't make sense. Things just don't quite add up. There are questions here that no one's ever bothered to ask. But once we start asking those questions, we find out there's no answers. Something is not right here. And so what happens is before the two of them are able to get too far into their conversation, we're met with the arrival of Danielle Moonstar and her cater. Of course, basically the new mutants in this particular story. But of course, once they get in, they begin, asking questions, hey, like what's going on? Where is Rogue? Is she here? And it's really kind of cool because they try to do a little bit of intimidation on Wolverine, to basically say, hey, look, if you're housing her, we're going to consider you an enemy of Fortress X. But Wolverine doesn't care. I mean, he's like, dude, whatever, man. Like, I mean, I'm the barkeep. what's the worst you could possibly do to me? You can't do anything to me that hasn't been done already. This is one of the other things that we learn, is that the reason why Wolverine doesn't really fight is because of his adamantium poisoning. If he exerts any real measure of excitement, if he, allows his metabolism to get too out of control, the poisoning will literally go into hyperdrive and he'll die extremely fast. He won't die instantaneously, but his death will be sped up extremely fast. And so because of that, we pick up with Daniel Moonstar's Cater chasing after Rogue, eventually catching up to her. The problem is that once she's acquired by Daniel Moonstar's Cater, Magneto comes in and drops a massive vehicle on top of her, basically killing her. And so because of this, people look at him with slanted eyes. They basically look at him now and say, is Magneto really on our side? And that's the crazy thing about this, is the way this is written, Magneto is kind of considered to be like the savior of mutant kind, right? The savior of what's left of the mutant population. But because of his actions here, people are beginning to look at him as less of a savior and more of like a dictator or something along those lines. Now, of course, we also have Legion, and we have, his psychic guys showing up here and, kind of trying to figure out what's going on. But then once everything's clear, Legion goes back to Moira McTaggart. Now, this is extremely important because remember, Moira McTaggart's just kind of there. Her and Legion are pretty close, although we don't really know why. But what Moira McTaggart is doing is basically crying over this notion that everything is going to come crashing down, that everything is going to come apart, and that there's nothing she can do to stop it. Now, of course, Legion says, I'm not going to let that happen. Now, the cool thing about this is it seems like Marvel's trying to throw us onto a different trail, right? But the most logical line to follow here is that, with Magneto basically turning everyone against him, it seems like Magneto is going to bring the safety of Fortress X crashing down, and it's going to result in like the slaughter of all these mutants, right? I mean, that's like the worst case scenario here, that there's no more Force Walls, there's no more Fortress X. Humanity comes in here, they take what's left of the mutant population, they ship them off to Alcatraz, they're all executed, or they lose their powers by way of a cure, or whatever the case may be. But then we pick up with Magneto himself, and Magneto, of course, begins descending down into the bowels of Fortress X. But the further down he goes, the further away he gets from the communication of X itself. Of course, again, this enigmatic entity that communicates with everybody. And the reason why he does that, at least what we're told, is that he's doing it intentionally. He's doing it so that he can get to a location where no one can hear what it is that he's saying. And the reason why is because he's going to speak with Rogue and with Gambit. Now, of course, this basically changes everything, because what we find out here is that the death of Rogue, her being branded as a traitor, was all a ruse. That Magneto himself had sent Kitty Pryde outside of Fortress X, out beyond the wall, because she was the only one that could phase through it to see what was on the other side, only for her to come back with blank pictures. So the question is like, what in the heck is going on? Well, when Rogue basically figured out what was going on, Magneto had to find a way to turn her into an enemy, to make her disappear, and then find a way to work alongside her, find a way to get the information that she had going on in order to try to understand what's happening so no one would ask questions. Because remember, if everyone thinks Rogue is dead, no one's going to be looking for her. And so because of this, what Magneto says is that he built Fortress X with his bare hands, using his own powers, using his powers over magnetism, so on and so forth. He knows every inch of this entire facility. But he says that in the middle of this facility is a room that he doesn't know anything about, that he's never seen that room before. He doesn't know why it's there. He doesn't even know what's inside of it. And so what he says is, your all's job is to go into that room to figure out what's there and understand why it even inhabits anything. In addition to this, we basically have Magneto going to Kitty Pryde, freeing her of her own prison, and then taking her to meet Professor Charles Xavier. Now, this is actually really cool, because it seems like Magneto is just kind of pulling out all the stops. At this point, he's like, there are questions that need to be answered here, and I'm tired of beating around the bush. And he basically frees Charles Xavier from his captivity and allows Charles Xavier to kind of emerge again, because he's no longer being sedated. And then Charles Xavier kind of mutters a little bit about how they tried to fix things, they tried to make things right, but ultimately passes out from the strain of everything that he had done, of everything that he had gotten into. Now, finally, we pick up with Rogue and we pick up with Gambit once they find access to this room in the center of Fortress X. And what happens is Rogue actually grabs this box. Now, to coincide with the event of Rogue grabbing this box is the arrival of Daniel Moonstar and her Cater. They basically corner Magneto alongside Kitty Pryde, with Magneto holding the body of Xavier. And as this takes place, it's this really, really cool situation where it's like Rogue saw the contents of this box, which basically kind of falls to the ground at the same time that Magneto talks to Daniel Moonstar and her Cater and says, look, guys, you have to acknowledge there's questions questions here that people need answers to, but no one seems to know what the answers are to these questions. They don't even know what in the world is going on. We basically kind of accept what's going on as an absolute truth, but we have no idea what's taking place. And so because of this, where Magneto tries to reason with Daniel Moonsart and where he's actually making a little bit of progress, we suddenly have the arrival of Legion as well as Psylocke. And of course, Psylocke shows up here and is like, Magneto's relieved of his command. Magneto is no longer in control. And that's kind of the crazy thing, because she's like, Fortress X is now under the jurisdiction of the Force Warriors, the ones that truly keep Fortress X safe. And so because of this,
I'm going to search up the colours of a parrot, because I know it's got red, but I know it also has green and other colours too. So I'm going to have to search that up quickly, just so I get the colours right. Because what I used to draw it was my art book, guys. But that's all sketches, so I don't have any colours in that one.
Well, finally, we pick up with Cannonball, with Cyclops, we pick up with all these guys who are basically like the front line. So this is saying they're the ones that directly fight against the various, human forces that try to invade Fortress X every single day. The difference here is that they always showed up at the same time. Like, these forces always showed up at the same time every day, but they haven't shown up today, and no one knows why. And Cyclops basically says, look, guys, I have the dog tags of a person that died yesterday, but I also have those same dog tags of a person that died 3 days ago. I want to know why I've killed the same person twice. And then he tells everybody else, look, if you have questions here that you want answers to, if you have questions that that you don't understand what's going on and you want to know what's happening, follow me and let's see if we can get answers to this. And so it's basically kind of everybody realizing that something's not quite right. It's everybody realizing that things don't seem to be what they're actually supposed to be. And so what happens is that in the middle of all this pandemonium, in the middle of all this chaos, with Daniel Moonstar and her care going against, Magneto and so on and so forth, Xavier finally coming to. Legion begins to panic.
So it seems to be a lot of different colors for a parrot. You can just have green ones, but that's not the one I drew.
She warned me that Xavier would turn each of us against each other. This is what Xavier says. Tell them the truth, David. Like, tell them whose tune we're all dancing to. And so switching back to Moira McTaggart, it looks like Moira McTaggart did something to make things the way they are. We don't know what it was that she did. But when you're talking about being like the foremost mutant geneticist, it kind of makes sense, right? Like, you would know how mutant body work better than anybody. I mean, she had her
blue
and history, but you got to remember, like, Moira McTaggart dealt with
green
Proteus.
wings
Proteus was a character
or yellow.
Okay,
so all sorts of different colors.
Reality on a universal scale. It wasn't like Franklin Richards, Matthew Malloy, and Jaspers, but he could warp reality within a localized space. But she knows how.
So I'm going to say,
would it really be that hard for her to synthesize them? For her to synthesize them and be able to use them. Not only that, this is when we also find out that Moira McTaggart is X. She is the disembodied voice that everybody's been hearing.
This
and
part
this is kind of the crazy
head is
situation.
red
How
here.
in the heck does this work? How in the heck does this all come out? Again, it's just kind of this continued tumbling, this continued weird sort of situation. And so what happens is once Cyclops and his group show up to where Charles Xavier's at,
all this is white.
These forces are kind of gathered in one place. What we do is we basically pick up with Charles Xavier telling everybody, I know what's truly going on here, and I will show all of you what it is that's happening. And this is when we learn the truth of the situation. We pick up with the mutant island of Utopia about 7
Pretty
days
much the whole thing is red.
Now to sidetrack for a second, within Marvel Comics, for those of you guys who don't know, Utopia
was
the
means I
island
can
the
just
X-Men
go
took
over it
precedence on following Tony Stark being
without too much
ousted as
effort.
Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Norman Osborn taking his place. Because Norman Osborn wanted to get rid of
I'm running out of time.
that could challenge his control. He kind of went after the X-Men, but the X-Men just took off before any of that happened. They just basically went to
might not be able to finish this one today, guys, but if I don't, then I will post the finished piece over on Instagram.
Norman Osborn's direct control, basically having Utopia as their own separate island off the coast of Alcatraz, I guess. I guess it wasn't really Alcatraz itself, but off the coast of Alcatraz. But the fact remains that we pick up with Charles Xavier and we pick up with a guy named Dr. Nemesis working on David Haller, Legion. Now, the basis behind this project, as it's being worked on by both Dr. Nemesis and Charles Xavier, is to basically cure Legion of his personalities. Now, Dr. Nemesis is a guy that we've never talked about before, but he's not really like a mutant geneticist, so much as he's a mutant with like a super intelligence. It's kind of his mutant power. But the idea here is that David Haller has always suffered from like multiple personality disorder. That's the basis behind it. Legion is a mutant that has thousands of personalities. Each personality has its own power set. That's why a lot of people say when it comes down to it, mutants that have singular personalities like Matthew Malloy, Franklin Richards are wildly powerful. Mutants like Legion that have multiple personalities are far beyond that, because its powers range everywhere from telekinesis to reality warping on a universal and multiversal scale. And so it's insane the kind of abilities that he possesses. But with Dr. Nemesis being here working alongside Xavier, the goal is to basically go through and imprison and eliminate each of these personalities, allowing the true David Haller to come out. The issue is that when Charles Xavier delves into the mind of David Haller, he basically finds this sort of personality antibody, which is to say, it's this personality that manifested in order to basically defend or protect all the other personalities in the mind of Legion in order to keep them from being destroyed. And so with the arrival of Charles Xavier, this personality takes it as an affront, like, you've been trying to destroy us. We're not going to let you do that. Instead, we're going to create a world where we don't have to worry about you being a threat. And that's essentially what happened here. David Haller, Legion, basically warped reality in a localized space and set it up so that, in a sense, Utopia doesn't exist anymore. Instead, there's only Fortress X, and there's only everybody that's kind of housed inside. Now, in reality, what basically happened here is he actually warped reality on a planetary scale. And the reason why is because he basically changed the entire history of the Marvel Universe for quite some time. Not only that, this is when we also realized that where, these guys in Fortress X have been fighting for 3 years, in reality, only 7 days have passed. And so everything that they've come to believe is not true. The idea that the Fantastic Four turned against the mutant population, the idea that Captain America, Tony Stark, the Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, that they all fought on behalf of humanity against the mutant population, none of that ever happened. Instead, it was just this entire reality warping scenario where David Haller not only changed localized space, or where Legion not only changed localized space, he changed everyone's memories, so none of them know the truth about what it is that's going on. In addition to this, Moira McTaggart, as she exists here, is not actually Moira McTaggart. Instead, this is the personality of Legion that did all this reality warping in the first place. And that's the inherent power of Legion. That's what makes him so dangerous. David Haller himself feels powerless in the face of all these personalities. Now, of course, what this was designed to do was basically set the stage for what was called Lost Legions, in the sense that once the story basically wraps up, that Legion's different personalities actually escape out into the real world and manifest themselves as physical beings. And so he's basically fighting all these different personalities, and they all have a wide array of different powers. The story's bonkers, but it's really, really cool at the same time. Like, it's really, really fun. But because of the fact that this Moira McTaggart personality is going into panic mode under the idea that everything that is worked to build is going to come crashing down, in response to this, it basically just initiates this massive attack by all these human forces. And the idea here is to basically engineer a situation to where all the other people that are there, all the other mutants that could possibly rise up against this personality, are all distracted. Because remember, they don't know if what they saw through Charles Xavier is real or false. They're still clinging on to the idea that everything that they've seen is real. But the goal of Moira McTaggart, of this Moira McTaggart personality, is to use that to their advantage and then wipe everything clean, sanitize the entire reality as it's been created, and replace it with a new and a better one, constantly learning as things go on. Now, of course, Charles Xavier speaks directly to Legion and says, hey, look, you have to find a way to rectify this. You have to find a way to fix this. You can't let things continue as they are. It's basically him telling Legion, you have to seize control of this personality. You have to make it your own thing. And so this is what happens. Like, Legion actually goes after this Moira McTaggart personality, and Moira McTaggart begins freaking out, saying, hey, look, like, we tried to make things perfect. We'll make it better next time. We'll fix it. We'll solve all this. But in response, Legion basically destroys that aspect of his personality. He basically wipes it from existence, goes out to the battlefield, and destroys everything that's out there. Destroys, all these different enemy ships, because remember, they're not actually there. They're all just whatever it is that Legion wants them to be. And so if he wills them out of existence, then they're gone. This is the other half of this situation, that where Legion had basically warped reality to a degree. Instead, what it seems like he'd actually done is grabbed Utopia and removed it from the universe. So it creates this really, really weird kind of situation. But ultimately, he ends up setting everything back to normal. He basically allows things to go back to the way they were before, where Utopia is restored, Charles Xavier's back. And the cool thing about this is that it allowed Marvel to kind of do a soft reboot with the New Mutants and X-Men Legacy line, in the sense that characters that had previously died were now brought back, because there were some characters in the story that were dead before the events of Age of X that were alive in Age of X. It was basically, Legion just kind of recreating them and bringing them back to life. And that's essentially what happened here. Once everything's returned to normal, they came with it. They came with the normal universe. And so at this point, what the story does is, again, it kind of wraps up here. But what the story does is it goes into an event called Age of X Aftermath, and then that begins to go into Lost Legions, which kind of just follows Legion, as he's going to try to round up these different personalities, as he's trying to catch these different aspects of himself. But this is a story that I always thought was kind of cool, because I like the idea that it just sort of picked up in the middle of everything, and you're like, what the heck's going on? But it was one of these really, really interesting stories from Marvel Comics. But there's also this whole thing, I want to say that it's Age of X X Universe #1 and #2, which actually explains everything that happened leading up to this point. Like, I think there's also Age of X Alpha, which explains Jean Grey killing 600,000 people. It explains Cyclops being used as a weapon. It explains like the Avengers and Spider-Man, all those guys going after the mutant population, why it is they went after the mutant population, all that kind of cool stuff. It creates a really interesting situation. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Raw Report. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I'll catch you all later. Peace.
Yeah, guys, go and check them out. They're worth checking out, as you can hear in the background. If you're into any kind of comics, every kind of comic, they'll have it. They're reading for you. But if you like drawing and watching me draw, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. My name, Jeff.
What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. All right, so continuing our videos on the X-Men chronology, which we need to get back on track with this. Remember, all this stuff comes after House of M, and this is kind of cool because this is basically like the return of Apocalypse after the events of House of M. Now, Apocalypse has always been a really, really interesting villain. He's one of these characters that nobody ever really knows how to write, and the reason why is because from the time he was introduced and over the years, especially in the 90s, and like the X-Factor stories with the original team and the X-Factor stories with the second team, the government-sanctioned team, Apocalypse was always one of these villains where it's like, if he chose to, he could eradicate the X-Men. He could just destroy them in their entirety. He's just that powerful. And so the question became, what do you do with a villain like that? Now, in truth, all that goes back to X-Factor issue number 4 or 5, when he made his first appearance by Louise Simonson and Walter Simonson. And he always used Horsemen. And that was kind of the caveat that Marvel would introduce, but it was always kind of a skewed eye. Like, okay, Apocalypse sends out his Horsemen, the X-Men or the X-Factor defeat the Horsemen, so why doesn't Apocalypse step in instead of just leaving? Apocalypse just kind of takes off. And the way that Marvel worked to basically explain this was essentially say that Apocalypse believes in a social Darwinism. Apocalypse makes efforts to conquer the world because in his mind he believes that he's making people in the world stronger. And so if he has Horsemen and if he sends those Horsemen out and the X-Men defeat the Horsemen, the X-Men have proven themselves worthy for the time, and Apocalypse just leaves. That's kind of how Marvel managed to work that whole thing in terms of providing an answer of why Apocalypse doesn't just destroy all the X-Men. Now, there have been times where Apocalypse has made moves and jumped into different schemes that are outside of determining whether or not the X-Men are worthy, and it's for a specific goal. And like, it's taken the power of multiple groups, the Avengers, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, X-Factor, so on and so forth, to like get him to go away. But one thing to bear in mind is really, as far as I'm aware, when it comes to the character of Apocalypse, he's never truly been defeated. He's just kind of been staved off. It's kind of been like, okay, I don't feel like dealing with this anymore, and then he just leaves. But the cool thing about this is that after the events of House of M, because 98% of the mutant population lost its powers, Apocalypse just woke up. Now remember, Apocalypse slumbers, right? Like, he goes through like these 1,000 or 2,000 year slumbers where he'll just kind of stay dormant for a while. And it's a way for Marvel to kind of write him out and then just bring him back, 5 years or 10 years down the line, whenever they want him to return. But he basically shows up here with this massive sphinx that he's built, of course, modeled after himself, alongside a character named Gazer. And Gazer was just one of these mutants out there that was pondering ending his life, more or less. And the result was that he was basically taken by Apocalypse, and he's going to be transformed into a Horseman. Now, this is one thing to keep in mind. Whenever Apocalypse turns someone into a Horseman, he usually doesn't take individuals who lust for it. There are people out there who want to be a Horseman of Apocalypse, and he usually rejects them because what he wants is to basically grab a person who is deemed to basically be weak, whether they're weak in mind or spirit or they're weak physically. It's the idea that like he can push them and make them worthy by subjecting them to genetic modification, to brainwashing, and turning them into a Horseman. So it's kind of like, I'm making you someone worthy, and then in turn you'll go forward and do my bidding. But at this point, we switch over to the Horseman of Pestilence. Now, of course, the whole goal of Pestilence is to basically spread illnesses across the world. Now, depending on what era we're talking about, this can be done in different ways. Whenever Apocalypse chooses a person to become a Horseman, he usually selects an individual whose powers will complement whatever role they're going to be playing. And so historically speaking, when a person became Pestilence, it was usually a mutant, sometimes a human, but usually a mutant that had the ability to basically kill things, where they had like a death touch of sorts, or the ability to like spread disease or to make a person sick or something along those lines. That was the original Pestilence. In this instance, with the mutant population being so low, to be quite frank, the pickings are slim. That's really all it is. And it's kind of cool because in this instance, Pestilence is actually going to like various places around the world and grabbing all these different diseases, the bubonic plague and smallpox and things like that, just rallying all these illnesses that humanity would normally have a kind of cure for, and then in turn destroy the various cures that exist for those illnesses. So it's essentially having all these illnesses in his possession and no way to stop it. Now, at this point, we jump back to Gazer. And again, this is the nature of becoming a horseman. For the most part, most horsemen are already like tried and proven in the sense that like they've been forged in the fires of combat, or they know how to fight, or whatever the case may be. But this goes all the way back to the original X Factor story. The idea was that when Apocalypse first made the Horsemen, there was no real leadership among the horsemen. It was just 4 horsemen. And so what he did is he had them all fight each other, and whoever won would be the leader. And it turned out to be Angel, or I guess Archangel, who was the Horseman Death, who became the leader of the horsemen. The result is that in this instance, and because Apocalypse is basically in a rush, it's let's test these guys, let's see what they're worth. We're going to put their mettle to the test, essentially to see if one of them is going to become a horseman, and whoever wins, they're the one who will become the Horseman War. Of course, Ozymandias steps in and takes out one of the other guys and spares Gazer. Now, Ozymandias is, of course, the chronicler of Apocalypse. The only real role he serves is to essentially write down the whole life and times of Apocalypse. And so the result is that Ozymandias has really kind of become this scheming guy. Now, a lot of that goes into the origin of Ozymandias, which you're welcome to watch the video down in the description, which will give you the origin on his whole character. Suffice it to say, he was unwillingly forced into his position. And the result is that he's really been working over the millennia to try to find a way to like destroy Apocalypse and free himself from his imprisonment and possibly even replace Apocalypse. And so that's the whole basis behind his idea. The issue with this is that for Apocalypse himself, he has to find a new horseman, or at least find, the third horseman that he's looking for. And so what we end up doing is switching over to Sunfire. Now, this picks up out of an existing story that there really was no reason for us to cover, but it was basically an idea where Sunfire was, kind of jumped into a conflict. He was double-crossed, and he had his legs cut off by Lady Deathstrike, who was the one-time love interest of Wolverine, turned into a villain, having cyborg modifications. The reason why he's kind of in this infirmary is because his legs have been removed. But the idea with Sunfire is he's always been exceedingly proud, if not arrogant. Now, he had a huge empire under his belt, and that's why it was all really happening. That's why he kind of maintained that mindset. But the idea that he's now bedridden because he lost his legs is a pretty crushing blow, because in his mind, he's kind of like half the person he used to be. But the idea is that Apocalypse showing up on his doorstep and basically saying, hey, look, I recognize you lack faith in yourself now. I can give you the means to return yourself to who you were before. Sunfire almost leaps at the opportunity. The problem with this is that Sunfire knows who Apocalypse is. And when the devil makes deals, those deals always have caveats. And that's what this is about. It's really kind of this situation where Sunfire is like, yeah, you show up, this gift is too good to be true. There has to be something with it. But in the end, he ends up going with it. He ends up taking the offer that's provided to him by Apocalypse.
Okay, guys.
Is jumping back to the Xavier Mansion.
That's it for today. Hopefully you have enjoyed this. That's as far as I need to take it. We have done the turtle, the monkey, and the parrot, and we put it all into one animal. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. And if you have, guys, don't forget to leave a like. I've got to end this stream here and head on off. So thank you very much for watching this one, and I will see you later on for some more games and some more art. Hopefully you will join me on some gaming tonight. And I'll see you again. My name is Blut084, B-L-U-T 084, Art and Games. Here every single day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. Don't forget to check out tomorrow, as tomorrow I'll be digitizing this one, guys. And I'll see you again. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.